Welcome to American Pulse, a new episode from American Pulse from Cairo. And today we're going to be talking about U.S. Foreign relations in the Middle East, specifically in the Middle East. The U.S. has been going through certain changes. The latest was a change in the administration, and now we have a new president, President Joe Biden, and he has his views and things on the Middle East. I'm honored to have Miss Judy Miller, who is a journalist and a Fox News contributor. Hi, Judith.
Michael.
Welcome to the show, as usual.
Good to be back.
Thank you. So tell me, Judith, change in administration, change of stance on things in the middle, specifically in the Middle East. What is Joe Biden administration towards the Middle East? Have we seen anything that formalized or kind of gave us an indication what the stance of the administration on the Middle East today?
Well, I think the administration is still forming its views, but there are certain similarities in the Biden foreign policy to that of his predecessor, Donald Trump. And one is with respect to the major powers, China. Yeah. We know that the Biden administration has signaled its intention to be very tough on China, and everyone to whom China reaches out. Ditto Russia, yes. Much harsher on Russia because of the cyber warfare. The Middle East is still a kind of work in progress because while Biden has signaled his determination to maintain his friendship with Israel, a long-standing friendship between the United States and Israel, and also repair America's relations with Arab countries, and that especially those that Donald Trump shunned, we have yet to see how that really plays out in practice. For example, one thing we do know about the Biden administration, and this has serious implications for Egypt, yes, is that the Biden administration intends to place a much higher priority on human rights and the observance of human rights. And therefore, we've already seen the Biden administration withhold $300 million in aid from Egypt based on Washington's concerns about Egypt's human rights record. Now, you could argue that
my understanding that President Joe Biden had made several attempts and calls to President Sisi himself at the time where there was a dispute, the Palestinian-Israeli dispute. So it looks like the new bridges are being, open to work with the administration.
Let's just back up a little to really understand President Biden's historic position, which will shape his current position. Back in the Arab Spring,
yes,
Secretary of State Tony Blinken, who was then Joe Biden's key foreign policy national security advisor, Tony Blinken very much wanted to support the ouster of Hosni Mubarak,
yes,
during the Arab Spring. But Joe Biden, a veteran of foreign policy and who understood Egypt's central role in the Middle East, did not support the ouster of Hosni Mubarak. Good. And already you saw the dynamics that you're seeing play out today in the Biden administration, where President Biden has a kind of traditional view of foreign policy and the importance of allies like Egypt and even Saudi Arabia, though there are many problems in that relationship. But he understands that at a gut level, whereas a lot of the people around him tend to be very much more focused on the progressive human rights agenda that enabled him to get elected by gaining support from the progressive wing of his party.
Absolutely, so really but we've heard President Biden talking about dealing with Khashoggi's murder, and we've seen the things played out in a way that many of the journalists like yourself were not too happy about the results of what had been promised, right?
Well, look, I knew Jamal Khashoggi very well. I was deeply appalled and saddened by his death.
Yes.
And I think that the United States has made clear its displeasure under both President Trump and President Biden. But relations are relations, and the Middle East is a key region of importance for the United States and for the world. And therefore, having a stable and steady relationship with many of these countries is important while one tries to deal, usually privately and behind closed doors, with human rights and other concerns.
Yes. What kind of difference have we seen between the administration of the former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden towards Russia in specific? I mean, I understand at certain points President Trump was being criticized for trying to make deals with Russia, but we see now President Joe Biden is trying to do the same thing, and he's being praised for it.
Well, it's a very different situation, I think.
Yes.
President Trump had a fascination with and obsession with Vladimir Putin, and he was very loath to criticize him, even when it meant that he would be criticizing his own intelligence community, who kept telling him that Russia was attacking the United States through its cyber channels, that Russia was up to no good. President Trump would not be moved. Now, that was the past. Now, with Joe Biden, you have a very different individual who is enormously patient and believes in traditional diplomacy, but is also willing to hold Putin's feet to the fire. There is no love there between Putin and Joe Biden. And I think the latest string of attacks, cyber attacks, bode ill for cooperation, even on the arms control front. But let's look at Egypt for a moment.
Yes.
President Trump called President Sisi, his favorite dictator, his favorite president.
Yeah.
You are not hearing that from President Biden. The first Arab leader to visit Washington will not be President Sisi. It is going to be King Abdullah of Jordan. So you see a very different set of concerns and interests manifest.
Yeah, but yet we see President Joe Biden calling President Sisi twice and thanking him for his effort for the ceasefire in Israel. And as you mentioned, that probably the administration realized the importance of Egypt in the Middle East, right?
Absolutely, and I think that President Sisi did Egypt a lot of good through his mediation efforts between Israel and Hamas after that 11-day war in the Middle East. And that also Egypt's efforts in Libya have been greatly appreciated as well. Egypt is viewed as a very important ally and strategic partner of the United States, but there is still deep concern within his party about Egypt's human rights record, and that is not going to go away.
Yeah, well, there's other, guests that we had in previous episodes. They mentioned that also, us in America, in the United States, we had human rights issues with George Floyd and all these, protests that, came across the country, and they said, why the United States is always trying to police the world with the human rights, meanwhile they have problem of their own. What do you say to that?
Look, there's no doubt that the United States has had its share of human rights concerns. Now, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to emphasize that there is tension within the Democratic Party and the administration between those who want to return to a more traditional, highly pragmatic approach to relations in the Middle East, and those who want to emphasize human rights as a greater part of the agenda. And I can't tell you now, Michael, which faction is going to win out in
Yeah.
this struggle. But it is going to be an important struggle within the administration.
I'm sure you watch the news closely, Judith, and I know, and I'm just saying this for my viewers because not only you've been on my show multiple times, but you also spoke in symposiums that we held, and you have a great amount of love to Egypt. You came to Egypt
Very
many.
much so.
I know,
Very
and
much so.
I
And would
know,
love
and that's
to
why I'm trying.
return as soon as the pandemic permits.
Yeah, I know. I don't even I don't even know if you remember how many times you came to Egypt, right? How many times you came to Cairo? This is one of the places that's close to your heart, and that's why I'm saying
It is.
to my viewers. But as you know, that there is an issue now with a big dispute between the Egyptians and the Ethiopians over the Ethiopian dam. And you probably, I'm almost 100% sure that you've been on the Nile cruises, and you've been, you know how valuable is the River Nile for the Egyptians. What's your take on this?
I'm very worried about this dispute, Michael, because I understand how essential the Nile is to Egypt. I mean, 90% of Egypt's over 100 million people now live along that river, and it is vital for Egypt's national security. President Sisi has made that clear, and Americans understand that. But I think I'm deeply troubled both by the chaos and the war within Ethiopia with the Tigrayans, and also Ethiopia's unwillingness to listen to Sudan and Egypt's concerns. I mean, just this past week, we've had Egypt and Sudan appeal to the UN Security Council for help in getting a legally binding document that would govern the uses of the Nile, which seems a very, very wise, pragmatic approach to this dispute. But the Ethiopians, as you know, rejected it out of hand and said, no, the African Union should handle this. Well, that does not indicate goodwill on the
and
part.
That's what that has been the game.
I'm very worried.
That has been the game for like 10 years now. They start negotiations, they move the negotiation from one place to the another. I mean, what do you think Egypt's options at this and Sudan's options are at this time are? I mean, 10 years of negotiations, go back to square one, and then Egypt had been just with the African Union and nothing happened there. Go back to the Security Council, nothing happened there. What do you think the options are? I know everybody's concerned, but how much does the world expect Egypt to play? To try to be as peaceful as they are right now?
Well, I think first of all, Egypt has its hands full with its own very ambitious domestic agenda, and Egypt has always been a responsible player in the Middle East when it comes. Since the forging peace with Israel, it has played a leadership role in peace efforts in the Middle East. But for those who are calling for armed action or military action, I just don't see that in the cards for Egypt. It would be highly unusual. And therefore, I don't think there's very much alternative to pursuing the diplomatic approach and aligning as many allies and neighbors with Egypt's position as one possibly can.
But
And
see, the
this is an
problem,
issue where
Judy,
diplomacy will be very
the
important.
problem here is Egypt is trying to be as patient as possible, but that gives time to the Ethiopians to fill the dam and make it reality on the ground. So
right. Well, as I said, that's why it's a worrisome dispute, because I don't see that Egypt has a lot of viable options to stop this. And the other factor here is just the intense chaos within Ethiopia at the moment. I mean, the war itself, in which both sides have been accused of terrible human rights abuses. But this is a long-term, long-standing, vital problem for Egypt, and there must be a diplomatic solution, because I don't see a military solution to this dispute.
Do you think what's going to end up happening in the war in the Tigray region by Ethiopia, and as we know that the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has won the Nobel Prize for Peace. Meanwhile, he's being accused of committing war crimes. So
Yes, well, both sides are. I mean, this is not a terribly this is a very fraught part of the world with a long history. And I visited Ethiopia long before the dam was being built, but in the middle of one of the worst famines they ever had. So I understand their desire to control the Nile and their own secure assets for water assets for their own development and growth. But I don't think we've seen anything on the part of the Ethiopian government or the Tigrayans, which would lead one to be optimistic about a happy outcome to this. Look, the Tigrayans have now made considerable military progress in their area. They've had significant military victories.
Yeah.
But the implications of that are for the Nile are still very unclear.
What do you think are the consequences if there's no option but the war? I know you're not vouching for that option, but what would be the consequences from your perspective and from your point of view?
I think it would be a disaster for the region. I think it would be a disaster, could be a disaster for Egypt. Egypt would be deploying forces far away from its territory, which always makes Egyptians uncomfortable, as you know. So I think that President Sisi is wise enough to understand that deploying military force is not likely to secure the outcome that he desires.
Yeah, he's trying his. I think he was trying his best, and he was always saying that that he doesn't want to go that route for sure. Nobody wants to go that route.
Exactly, because he is a military man and he understands the implications of the use of force.
Yeah.
And if you look at that region, or if you look at Egypt's southern borders, you see chaos, not a stable situation in the Sudan. You see not a stable situation anywhere around Egypt, and is not a stable situation in Libya, as you know. So President Sisi really has a huge challenge in terms of both his foreign policy and his domestic policy, which I think underlines the need for a close and good relationship with Washington.
Judith Miller, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you again. I'll see you soon in New York when I come back.
Or in Cairo, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a little break and we'll come back after the break with American Pulse. Welcome back to American Pulse, and my next guest is Senator Richard Black, former senator of the state of Virginia. Welcome to the show, Senator Black.
It's good to be with you, Mike.
Thank you very much for being on the show again, and we're always happy to have you on the show. It's been a quite difficult time and difficult options for Egypt now with the dispute that it has with Ethiopia over the dam, the Renaissance Dam. So what's your take on this, Senator Black?
Well, in America, when I was a schoolboy, everybody knew that the Nile River was the lifeblood of Egypt, and 97% of Egypt's water come from the Nile. Most of it comes from the Blue Nile tributary through what is now the dam that Ethiopia has put up, the Gerd Dam, and it's 80% complete. If they fill the dam again this year like they did last year,
correct,
they'll be able to start 2 of the 16 turbines. So it's a matter of concern for the United States government, and very, very interesting situation. I think President El-Sisi, he's a very wise man. As you know, I was the first American official to ever come out publicly in support of
Yes.
President al-Sisi.
Yes.
It's been a long time.
Back in 2013, yes, I remember that vividly, and I remember
It was
all your
very
support.
it was very controversial back then. I got a lot of criticism.
Yes.
And now it has turned out that President al-Sisi he's one of the world's great leaders, highly respected, and a very wise man.
Yes.
And he has worked on the issue with the dam, where the things that he says, the statements he has made have been very measured, very diplomatic, but at the same time, it seems that Ethiopia has been rather greedy about their approach, and they've got sort of Egypt's and Sudan's backs to the wall on this.
Yeah, they actively and deliberately and intentionally violating all kind of agreements out there, and they unilaterally making decisions to fill the dam for the second time, which was the same thing that happened last year. We let it, Egypt let it go. It was only 5 billion cubical water, but this year it's going to be 18 billions. That's more of a water bomb right behind that wall, and then they refuse to give the specifics about the safety of the dam. Nobody even knows if the dam can hold that much water without exploding. They're targeting 74 billion cubical water.
Well, the transparency is the problem. Both Egypt and Sudan, I think, have been very reasonable. They've bent over backwards. They've been negotiating for 10 years with Ethiopia. And, the water does not belong to Ethiopia. The water belongs to all nations that are served by the river. And international law requires Ethiopia to coordinate with the other nations. So there's an arrogance about their approach that makes it very difficult for the other nations to deal with.
Where do you think, Senator Black, where do you think they're getting this strength from? Where are they getting this attitude to oppose the Egyptian and the Sudanese people will? Where do you think, who's supporting this country?
Well, I'm not seeing a lot of outside support for them. The United States has steadily moved closer to the Egyptian position. When President Trump was in office, he was very explicit. He said, look, basically, Ethiopia is pushing Egypt where they've got to take action.
Yes.
And so he understood, and President Biden, I believe, has continued that approach.
Yes.
We have cut off some foreign aid to Ethiopia. We've issued certain warnings to them.
Yes, but that's for the war going on in the Tigray. That's not for the Renaissance Dam yet. But do you think, if Egypt has no choice but to take a military action, would you support this action?
My impression, from what I have read, there's an article in Foreign Policy, which is sort of the journal of the deep state, the bureaucratic state, and they are talking about the possibility of what might happen in the event of a conflict, and they seem to be rather sympathetic toward Egypt. So I think, President al-Sisi has been very wise, and he has repeatedly emphasized that he's looking for a diplomatic solution, not for a military solution.
Absolutely. Especially he's a military man, and he knows the cost of war. I mean, yourself, Senator Black, you were in the military before, right?
Yes, I've been in very, very fierce combat personally myself. My radio men were killed right beside me, and I was wounded. So And plus, I've flown as a pilot. I've been on the ground as an infantryman. I've sort of done all of it, but all of it in very intense battle. But yes, President al-Sisi is very sensitive to that. If you look, when he was asked by Saudi Arabia to get involved in the war in Yemen, he took a very minimal approach. He was trying to be respectful to Saudi Arabia, but he knew that this was not a wise decision, and so he did not put troops into battle in Yemen, and Yemen has turned into, of course, to a
Yes.
for the whole region. So he's been very measured in his approach and very wise, but I would caution Ethiopia not to push this man too far, because when action needs to be taken, he takes it very decisively.
Yes.
And so I think their arrogance is what is so frustrating to the international community, and certainly to the Egyptian government.
How would you see? Do you think the Congress and the Senate, or at least the U.S. Congress, should impose more sanctions, real sanctions on Ethiopia? And what would be those sanctions? I mean, cutting out some aid is not really a punishment. I mean, I always say I said in my show a couple of times, the time has to match the crime. I mean, you can't just deprive 100 million people of the right for water and then just punish them by stopping giving them visas, right? It's not a real punishment.
Well, as you know, I'm not a big fan of sanctions. I'm very opposed to the sanctions on Syria, for example.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think something might be warranted. The United States has the ability to basically make the currency in Ethiopia non-tradable. This is what has been done to other countries like Syria, and
Iraq.
through the international exchange system, they just devalued the currency. They are able to impose sanctions that can be damaging, and so it's not beyond possibility. Now, as you know, we're in the posture where we're trying to get out of Afghanistan. That's going to be a very messy situation. I think it's going to develop.
It's probably going to create another vacuum for terrorists to come in and take over. Like same thing happened in Iraq, and then we saw ISIS taking over the space.
Well, I think we've been playing games with the terrorists a little too much. We have supported Al Qaeda in Idlib province of
some American diplomats and politicians. They always play the game of the saying, keep your friend close, your enemy closer. But when I tell them, when your enemy is a ticking bomb, you don't want to keep a ticking bomb closer, and that's what we have been doing with terrorism, right?
No, we have been working in a very cynical fashion with terrorism. We have been unwavering supporters of Al Qaeda in Syria. Basically, you have a war between this legitimate government of Syria, the popularly elected government, and this group of terrorist thugs up in Idlib province. We need to get rid of that relationship with Al Qaeda. These are the people that bombed the Twin Towers on 9/11 and killed 3,000 Americans. And it's bizarre. The Central Intelligence Community or intelligence agency is out of control. It's not under the control of the president or the government of the United States. And so I think we need to shift away. Now, on the other hand, when we talk about Ethiopia,
Yes.
I think we have a very clear-cut case. I mean, the international community must understand that after 10 years of good faith negotiating by Egypt and Sudan, and the arrogance and unwillingness to find a solution on the behalf of Ethiopia, it portrays a sense of greed and arrogance that just it's making it difficult to maintain the peace. And I would hope that the United States is acting very proactively, diplomatically, to warn and caution Ethiopia that at some point they're going to push the United States into taking some kind of action.
Yeah. So far, the press releases of the White House and the administration of President Joe Biden has been trying to push all parties to come to the negotiation table and had excluded all other options beside the diplomacy, which seems to be not working because you have one side that is trying to cooperate, but then the other side is unilaterally taking decisions and forcing, like like what we say in the business world, hustle take over. They're taking over, by force. I mean, what would be, it's just, it looks like the United States of America does not favor, and honestly, nobody does favor the military action. But if it was the only option for Egypt, what would be the case? What would be the world dealing with Egypt after that?
One possibility would be to perhaps threaten to provide certain munitions to Egypt that would be useful in any sort of intervention. Now, I don't think a military action that destroyed the dam would be helpful. I think that the dam itself could be a very good thing for the region. It's just that
if it was used for the proper causes, right? If it was used to generate electricity for development and so forth. But if it's only used to keep the water and then later sell it to Egypt and Sudan, then how is it helpful? It wouldn't be helpful at all.
No, I think I would just tell the Ethiopians that you must realize that at a certain point you're going to box in Egypt, you're going to box in Sudan.
Yes.
And it's not wise to do.
I think we're there. I think this is the point, because once they fill the second, they finish the second fill, it's they have no choice. It's going to be Egypt and Sudan will be boxed in.
I wish that the United Nations would become more proactive.
Yes.
Now, I understand they don't want to get involved in water disputes. I understand that because that's a different type of expertise than what they have.
Yes.
But at the same
time, they entertained 2 meetings so far, which is a positive sign. But nothing came out of those meetings.
Yes, and I think perhaps they need to have more visible discussions about it that can highlight the intransigence of Ethiopia and the need for the international community to perhaps just put more diplomatic pressure than they have, because so far there's little attention being paid to it by the mainstream media.
Correct.
In countries. And the last thing we need is another war. We've had too many wars for too long. Egypt doesn't want war. Sudan doesn't want war. And so the recklessness of Ethiopia it should be very frustrating to all nations at this point.
Senator Black, thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for your insights. We'll hope to see you again on the show. We'll take a break and we'll come back right after the break. Welcome back to American Pulse. ورجعنا لكم بقى لتحليل ما اللي اتقال في الفقرتين اللي فاتوا. الحقيقة زي ما حضراتكم شايفين انه في مشكلتين. اول مشكلة انه القضية قضية سد النهضة بالرغم من تدويلها من الجانب المصري والجانب السوداني، إلا أنه صانع القرار الأمريكي والمعنيين بالأحداث اللي بتحصل في منطقة الشرق الأوسط يعني ما شافوش الكلام دوت متغطي بالمين ستريم ميديا أو الإعلام الأمريكي بشكل واضح، وما شافوش تغطية كافية النيجوشيشنز او المفاوضات اللي عدت بيها مصر في خلال ال10 سنين اللي فاتوا. وده طبعا يعني ممكن نقول انه غير مقصود ومقصود في نفس الوقت. يعني انا مش قوي مع نظرية المؤامرة، ولكن هو شيء لا يعني الداخل الامريكي والشيء لا يعني الداخل المواطن الامريكي في شيء. ولكن احنا على الصعيد الاخر لما بيبقى فيه شيء سلبي تجاه مصر او تجاه منطقة الدول العربية بيتقال بشكل واضح وبشكل صريح يعني. فاحنا نتمنى ان يبقى يعني التعامل في كلتا الحالات في كل الحالات بنفس القدر وبنفس المساحة. احنا شفنا السيناتور ريتشارد بلاك وهو راجل كان ليه خلفية عسكرية، وقال يعني هو كان بيحذر اسرائيل او انا اسف اثيوبيا. هو الحقيقة هي غلطة، بس يعني ممكن ما تبقاش غلطة قوية، يعني هي غلطة حقيقية. ان معروف ان اسرائيل هي من تدعم السد الاثيوبي ومن تقف خلف اثيوبيا، ولكن هو كان بيحذر اثيوبيا من التعامل المتعنت مع الإدارة المصرية ومع الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي. وهو قال كلمة يعني واضحة جدا، وقال يعني ما تدوس على زراير الراجل دوت، يعني اللي هو يعني ما توصلوش لمرحلة ان انت بقى استفزيته لدرجة ان انت مش يعني مش هيقدر بقى يعني يوقف الحل العسكري. وهو بيقول الكلام دوت. لا، ودوت على فكرة دوت يعتبر مدح كبير في شخص الرئيس السيسي، ان هو صبور جدا، ان هو وصل بهذا الصبر، يعني بكم هذا الصبر لمدة 10 سنين، ان هو ما اتخذش قرار بشكل عشوائي، وانه تعامل مع الموقف بمنتهى الحكمة. هو قال very wise. ولكن ما ينفعش انك بقى تقعد تضغط على حد بهذه الحكمة وبهذه الحنكة في محاولة التعامل مع هذا الملف الشائك. احنا شفنا طبعا الصحفية جوديث ميلر في الجزء الأول من الحلقة، وهي طبعا يعني كانت بتحاول تضغط بأجندة معينة في التعامل مع تجاه مصر. يعني هي طبعا ليها مرجعية ديمقراطية وليها مرجعية انه دايما بتستخدم ملف حقوق الإنسان في المنطقة كمدخل للتعامل مع المنطقة. وأنا يمكن ذكرت لها قلت لها في نفس الوقت أن في ناس كتيرة بتتهم الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بأن عندها مشاكل في حقوق الإنسان، وإحنا شفنا يمكن دوت كان ظاهر جدا في المؤتمر الصحفي اللي حصل ما بين اللي عمله فلاديمير بوتين الرئيس الروسي، لما اتهم فيه الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. لما أحد الصحفيين سأله قال له حقوق الإنسان في روسيا، قال له أنتوا عندكم مشاكل حقوق إنسان أكتر من أي حتة تاني في العالم، وأنتوا عندكم حوادث قتل المواطنين ذو البشرة السمراء ومن أصل أفريقي، وزي حادثة جورج فلويد، وعندكم برضو مشاكل تانية في اختراق الكونجرس الأمريكي. يعني الحقيقة كان شد لايت أو بيلقي بالضوء على بعض المشكلات داخل المجتمع الأمريكي، وكان عايز يقول إنه ما ينفعش إن أنتوا تبقوا عندكم المشاكل ديت وتوعظونا. يعني أعتقد إنه كان يعني واضح جدا إن الفترة الجاية هنبقى مترقبين دور الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية في محاولة حل هذه المشكلة العويصة جدا في سد النهضة. نتمنى إنه يبقى دور إيجابي لمصر وليس دور يمكن في الجلسة اللي فاتت كان على الحياد بشكل كبير ويدعم ويضغط في اتجاه الحل الدبلوماسي، لكن هو حل دبلوماسي ازاي والطرف الآخر اكتفلي أو بشكل مستمر وبشكل واضح إنه بيخترق وبيخرق كل المعاهدات وبيحاول يخلي سد النهضة دوت أمر واقع. احنا طبعا يعني للمرة المليون بنثق في الإدارة السياسية وبنثق في حنكة وحكمة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي في التعامل مع هذا الملف اللي هو الحقيقة وجودي، اللي أنا أعتقد كمان إن هو لما قال للمصريين احنا عمرنا ما خذلناكم وانا شخصيا عمري ما خذلتكم، ما تقلقوش، لكن قلقكم مشروع وواجب، واحنا كلنا كمصريين وطنيين طبعا خايفين على بلدنا وخايفين على مستقبل ولادنا واحفادنا. فالميه هي الحياه، والميه المياه لا تفاوض على المياه، لا تفاوض على حصة مصر التاريخية. احنا بالعكس احنا يمكن محتاجين مياه زيادة، وعشان كده شفنا مشاريع التحلية وشفنا مشاريع الأنفاق المياه الجوفية، ولكن لا تفاوض على المياه. إن شاء الله ربنا يحفظ مصر ونخرج من المحنة ديت بأقل الخسائر وبانتصار كبير جدا إن شاء الله. ونتابع حضراتكم إن شاء الله في الحلقات القادمة من برنامجكم النبض الأمريكي. تصبحوا على خير.